Hi, my name's Danny. I am a sound designer and composer on James 5th Katherine. My main responsibilities as a sound designer are to make sure that the system in each venue is capable of producing the show in a way that's satisfactory for both the audience and for the cast on stage. Then to design the content and the way that the show is operated and make sure that all of those elements can be achieved by the team that are in place. And then, making content, designing sound, and then because especially on shows of this scale, I tend to work as a composer as well, I'm also writing original music as an integrated part of that process. A typical day in my job as a sound designer and composer on a theatrical production tends to vary between two main things: being in rehearsal and listening and noting and trying to really understand what's happening with the show and what the feeling of the show is and what it needs from me. And then going back with that information to my studio and creating content or choosing music, editing it, choosing sound effects, designing sound effects, making all the content and the ingredients, which I can then come back and do the third distinct part of the job, which is being in tech rehearsal and assembling all of those elements together with the whole team to make a coherent and hopefully powerful production. It feels to me like it's not necessarily a role about your own personal expression, and I sort of weirdly go through the same process with almost every show where I sort of have a big idea or a big concept which almost always ends up falling by the wayside, because actually what you're doing is supporting a show moment to moment. And it's about the truth and the integrity of those moments. I feel like I'm doing my job well if in the first place the cast, the actors feel it feels right to them. Because if the sound that's in the show is right, then it should support their performance. If those building blocks are there, then that contributes to the director and the writer's vision, and ultimately comes to the audience as hopefully something that's coherent and makes them feel like they're somewhere or feel a certain way. But it's more about, I would say, the energy and the momentum of the performance than about the emotion. I think often when you score for emotion, you immediately it's too easy to go too far. But if you're with the energy of the performance and you're helping to build tension or release tension, then that's usually a good way to approach it. As a composer for theatre, I do play a number of instruments, none of them to a level that I would describe as performance level. But I play well enough to be able to create material in the studio. Growing up, I played several instruments, including violin, trumpet, double bass, electric bass, guitar, and other things. And I do all of those things, not so much the trumpet, but I play guitars and keyboard-based instruments. I use a lot of synthesizers and virtual instruments and sound libraries and all kinds of things. And then sometimes I work with other musicians if it needs a special ingredient, a special kind of drumming or a special kind of voice. Then I will try to bring in that person into the production and record content in the studio to build into a piece of music that's hopefully unique and works really well for the production. So I started doing sound design in youth theatre in Australia, at the Australian Theatre for Young People. I started there as an actor, but then it just sort of seemed like a natural thing because I did both music and theatre to combine the two. And so I think I made it known that I was interested in it, and eventually they gave me a chance to do it. My first show, I believe, was called Bubble, which was like a physical theatre piece. It had lots of sound and music in it, so it was a really great way to start. And I went on to make several shows for them at a kind of semi-professional capacity. And then when I came to Scotland, I met someone who needed sound for a show for very young children. It was called My House. And I just started to build from there. In terms of gaining skills and qualifications to do my job, I didn't have a traditional path. I didn't go to drama school. I didn't do audio engineering qualification or any of those things. My degree was in anthropology, which has a lot to do with performance, understanding ritual, understanding how people experience things together, which I think I use in my job quite a lot, even if it's not at a conscious level. But in terms of practical skills, there are popular pieces of hardware and software that are used predominantly in the industry. There's online tutorials. You can learn most of the skills that you need probably yourself if you're motivated. And then you can make contact with productions that you're interested in, come and spend time in the rehearsal room, in the tech rehearsal, and try and work out where you think you might fit in. Again, for me, it is a job that is about listening and about sensitivity, much more than it is a job about technology, although I take for granted all the technical tools that I use in order to achieve it. Well, I think the biggest creative challenge is always just sort of the unknowability of something. I mean, this is a very unusual situation on this show where we're in the same space for rehearsals that we're opening the show in, which is an incredible advantage. Usually you're in a rehearsal room which bears no resemblance to where the show's going to end up. You don't usually necessarily have a great system to listen on, and so you're kind of having to reconcile what is really happening in the room with what's in your head and what you ultimately want it to become. And the joy of it is, sometimes you're lucky and it all comes together and you end up with a couple of moments which just really are transcendent for the audience, and you're able to appreciate that you've contributed to that.